1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening. So far, we still have a few folks to come in, and you guys are going to try to get away without being live on camera, huh? Okay. Okay, Raleigh. Thank you. All right. And David, how are you? And now, do you want to go as Ibitayo or Alex?
No, whichever one it's easy for you, but
Whatever. Okay, whatever works. Yeah. Okay. One of our colleagues is stuck in Mexico with some COVID issues. We hope he makes it tonight. But if somebody in their party tested differently, their stay in Mexico may be a bit extended. So we have to work through all this stuff. So, all right. We'll wait just another second. I think we're about all here. We have let's see. We have a smaller, I have a few more folks coming, but yeah. And Warren, Eric, Abraham, David, and Raleigh. Yeah, I thought we had 7, and I know Austin is. Right, David, Warren, good to have you guys here. And let's see, we have, I think we're short Eric, okay. And Abraham, okay. All right, well, we'll give it another few seconds here. I do want to let you know that the course is the Zoom session is being recorded. Anything you say can and will be used against you, depending on Colorado is a single source law for, yeah, let's enable, yeah, that's a good idea for a transcript, is a single party notification. So in other words, in a state like Virginia, both parties have to agree in some way that's legally provable that they want the transaction recorded. But in Colorado, interestingly enough, you don't have to do that. So anyway, so just be careful when you're when you're recording a conversation. I know this for a fact because I had a very abusive boss 3 or 4 jobs ago who used to yell and scream at people and just was absolutely terrible. And I just started recording these because I knew sooner or later I was going to have a problem with this guy. And I did, and I sent the recordings to the board. And I was a director, and he was, my boss, but not by much. And anyway, it was it's good to have evidence. So anyway, just be real careful, because I will never use this information against you unless you try to fire me. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm Professor Bauer, and I'll be teaching this wonderful course in contracts and procurement. I hate the fact that the word procurement is misspelled on the Canvas, but there's only a certain amount of letters that Canvas will permit. So we have to abbreviate procurement. So it sounds like it's from the South, procurement. So anyway, and I really am excited for you to be a part of the class tonight and this term. This is I think it's my 6th time that I've taught contracts. I've been here at DU for 5 years, and so I was doing Zoom before Zoom was cool in terms of remote classes and whatnot. I think I referenced you to LinkedIn to learn all the wonderful and impressive things that I've done and where I've gone to school and who I've who I've gotten fired from. But no, seriously, my experiences have been broad in the technology world, and hopefully they can be of some benefit as we sort through a very interesting phenomenon in the business world, particularly in light of COVID, and that'll be sort of a sub theme of our discussion. Before we get started, I've got some slides, and I'll make those mailed out to you with the video and the transcript for tonight. That way, especially for our one student who's not here, be able to catch up on that. I always try not just to regurgitate the assignment details or the lecture details, but to give some unique focus to it, and then to break down the assignment into some very specific activities that I hope you can understand even more clearly than they are spoken of. I've been teaching the enterprise architecture class at DU for the last 3 or 4 terms, and it's a very confusing set of assignments, and they are sequential. Week 1 you do this, week 2, week 3, week 4, etc. And so the additive nature that you're adding to what you've already done can be intimidating. And so I've learned to just break it down really clear. And if there's any way that I'm not understood, I'll make sure that you certainly have the time to ask questions or to get feedback or etc. And why don't we, at this point, I live outside of Colorado Springs in a little redneck area called Black Forest. It's about 8,000 feet. I live as far away from people as my wife and I can, and our kids are grown, and we have 4 dogs, and we like that arrangement. Our kids live on the East Coast. My one son is a graduate from Carnegie Mellon, and he is in financial tech, doing things I have no idea how to explain. And the other one is in investments. He works for Fidelity. So their job is to keep me living in the style to which I've become accustomed in my old age. So anyway, but our dogs are really the most important part of our life. And I would just say, you may not know this, but do you know why a dog is better than a spouse? Okay, well, I'll tell you, this is the only pathetic joke you'll get tonight. All right. You can take your spouse. Now, this is hypothetical. Don't do this at home. You could take your spouse and your dog and throw them in the trunk of your car for a few hours. Okay. When you open the trunk, the dog's going to wag his tail at you. So, your spouse may not. So anyway, a veterinarian told me that joke, by the way, which is kind of evil. But anyway, so I'll show you a picture of our dogs sometime. We have 4 dogs, which is more dogs than anyone should have. The people in my in my neighborhood know us as the dog people, and but anyway, but we pick up our dog waste unlike most people. And anyway, anyone who thinks that left alone, people will always do the right thing has never had a neighborhood where people have dogs, because there are a lot of them who don't understand that if they don't pick up, it leaves a bad world. So let's introduce ourselves, and whatever order you want to go in, and who you are, what you do, or who you work for, and how long have you been in the program?
I'll kick it off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can, David.
Okay. So David Neese, I am a defense contractor with khaki. I've been doing that for about 6 years. I was active duty Air Force for a while and wanted to get paid more, so I separated. I'm still in the reserves, so I do that part-time. And I am in the project management program of organizational leadership with a certificate in strategic innovation. And I'm about halfway through. I think after this semester, I'll have 5 more classes to complete. So I think by the end of December, I think I'll finish my capstone and I'll be done.
Great, that's fantastic, David. So 2022 is going to be a good year for you. And I think in our discussions earlier this week, I told you that I was a subcontractor for khaki 150 years ago, and in the DC area. And it's nice to see how much work you guys have been able to get, and the success of your organization. It was a more DC, more Pentagon focus, and I'm sure it's grown in terms of its scale, khaki UK, and some of the other activities there. So it's great to have you on board. Okay, who's next?
I'll go next, since David wants to take all the spotlight like usual. I've been in the PMBA program since March of 2020, and I got one more class to finish up there, and then I'm doing a certificate specialty with project management, so I don't get to go through all of the courseware for it. I just get to take the major pieces. I work for Sierra Nevada Corporation in Centennial. I've been there since 2017 when I retired from the United States Navy.
Okay, I got an Air Force and a Navy person so far. I went to West Point and was in the Army for a while. So at least one weekend a year, we won't be talking to each other. But it was wonderful this year that every team managed to beat one of the other service academies and lose to one of the other service academies. So everyone got the Commander-in-Chief's trophy or whatever. So that's good there. So, all right, who's next?
I can go.
I'll go. Yeah.
So I'm Warren. I'm in my 3rd quarter here in project management focus. I live in Denver. I work for CU Denver at the Anschutz campus doing IT work. I do dedicated support for the research administration there, which I've only been doing for about a month now. But yeah, live here in Denver, and I'm hoping to be through this program the end of 2022. So,
great. Yeah,
nice
I made a smart ass comment to you, Warren, about academic IT is, trying to do all the things that corporate IT does, but with 10% of the headcount, even less budget. So I've worked in that environment from, being a network manager and ran a help desk and then was a CIO, and thought deep thoughts and couldn't pay for it. So anyway, you have my sympathies and understanding. So good to have you on board, Warren. Okay.
Here.
All right, so I'll go next. My name is Abraham. I'm an architect, and this is my 2nd term. I can really see a few familiar phrases from our class as well. I've been with David the last semester in organizational leadership, and with Warren and Alex in principles of project management. Um, so I've only been here for almost 4 months now. So most of the things are still new for me. I'm hoping to get my work permit in the coming two months. So I will hopefully start working in one of the architectural firms here. So I mean, I'm trying to relate project management with architecture, because basically in architecture, it's all about projects, all about designing and managing projects. So any mismanagement in the projects would definitely cost a lot. So that is what I've been basically experiencing in my nearly 4 years of work experience. So that's why I'm here.
That's great, Abraham. It's good to have you on board. Now, you're a real architect. You're not like an information or enterprise architect or one of these Seinfeld guys who pretend they're a real architect. You're a real like building architect, huh? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I had the title of enterprise architect for about 6 months, and it was back when Bill Gates was calling himself the chief architect. And I think these people, Gates was a college dropout, so, he was never an architect. So, but people like to throw that term around like they're,
exactly.
but you're a real architect. All right. So okay.
More like a builder.
Yeah. Good for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Alex. I'm an international student. This is my second quarter. I also came around the same time Abraham came on board, I think September. I'm studying organizational leadership with my concentration in project management. I've been doing project management for about 3 years. Nestle Nigeria PLC. I was working with the project team as the installation assistant, and that's my experience on projects for a while. I've worked directly with project engineers and project managers. Basically, we do installation of machines or modification of buildings, etc. Thank you.
Great. A lot of you have are in or working through the project management course. I helped to write some of the courses, the 4 courses in that area. I have been running projects for 150 years, and so I have, as my brother said in a meeting about our experience, we were pitching something. He said, "We've been stupid first." In other words, I think I've made every mistake a project manager can make. I wish I've learned from all of them. Sometimes when you repeat the same ones, it's even more frustrating. But do all of you know that as a DU ICT student, you have access to the whole suite of Microsoft programs, including Microsoft Project? Okay, all right. If you don't, let me know. I'll give you the link. I just got a new PC a couple of days ago. I needed a write-off on some contract expenses that I made last year, so I bought a computer that was way too expensive for what I really needed, but I needed to write it off. So the great thing is, I didn't know that Microsoft Project 2021 is now available, and Visio and all the other kinds of things. As long as you're in the program, it's a cool thing to have. So right before you graduate, refresh your downloads. At least you get a year or two before they come and cancel you. But anyway, just one of the cool resources that we have in the program. All right, I am going to share my screen and see if, okay, can you guys see a introduction to procurement screen?
Yeah, we got you.
Son, okay, great. And this will be captured, and I'll also send out the slides just because sometimes that works out a little bit better. The one thing I can tell you about this course is you're going to be dealing with contracts and procurement in your career, in your family, in your next job, or your promotion, or in your life. And I hope that the class and our work together can give you some help in how to approach these contracts. I had my roof destroyed in a hailstorm, I don't know, about a year ago. And I'd always been at the mercy of roofing contractors and people I felt like were cheating me. And so, having taught procurement and requests for proposals and requests for quotations and RFX, I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to treat this like a procurement project. And so I found the 10 most recommended roofers in my area. I sent out an RFI, just wanting to find out more information on what I should do as someone whose roof was who needed to be replaced. Roofing is like the used car salesman of the builder's environment. There's a lot of deceit and cheating on the part of all the players in the ecosystem. And then I sent out to those to 7 of those requests for a proposal, and then the top 3 my wife and I actually interviewed. And it's the first time that I approached home repair in a business way. And I got to tell you, it was a very satisfying experience. We found a really good roofer, did a very good job. He did well. I felt like I finally understood how to treat my insurance company. Having a mortgage on this house, I realized that the mortgage owner, the Federal Credit Union, was also a party to this. You don't just get the insurance check and take it to Vegas. They want to make sure that you actually spend it on the repairs of the roof. So it was a pretty good situation. So I'm very interested in these issues. I've worked in international organizations and technology consortia on software-defined networking and metro Ethernet technologies, as well as storage networking, involving the leading companies in those practice areas around the world. And so, understanding, I manage 5 testing and interoperability labs in Singapore, and in Hyderabad, in Tokyo, in Beijing, at Tsinghua University, and here in Colorado Springs, and had a pretty good sense of how these companies tried to create value, and those experiences I hope will be helpful in this area. All right, let's continue. We did our introductions. Please look at the syllabus for the details in the course. I'll talk to what I believe success means in this class, a little bit about this online hybrid thing. It's a bit different, and we'll talk about how to write well, Turabian and UCall and other outrages. I think that I have a master's degree in English, and I teach technical writing for another university. And to be able to communicate well in writing is a skill that can be improved upon, and it is one of the key ways in which you're evaluated in your career. I believe it can be improved, and I will try to help all of you to do that. I have a few things that I've learned teaching here for 5 years that will, I think I could pass them along and help you. This is from Canvas, so I won't spend too much time on this, but this is leadership and practical skills in contracts and procurement. And we'll talk about all the various RFX documents, RFPs, RFIs, they seem to be making new ones every day. What a statement of work is. Some of these things you may be familiar with on your job, and we'll, if that's true for everyone, we'll move quickly there. But if not, we'll spend our time. Sometimes I have found that you can be sitting in a corporate coffee break area and somebody starts rattling off, yeah, well, we did this RFP, we had to check this RFI, and everybody sort of nods their head, kind of like project management. But the plain fact of the matter is they may not really know the difference. And so I always like to make sure we understand that. So we used to do a lot more negotiation in the course, but we'll talk a little bit about it. And we'll go from there. The outcomes are to look at how procurement relates to the company's success, to understand some of the procurement tools and processes, statement of work, RFPs, contracts, etc. And then to look at some of the aspects of a procurement project, particularly in the realm of stakeholder communication, and to look at how this field is becoming digitally transformed, the relationship with suppliers and vendors, the insight that you as the prime may have into their supply chains, and just more closely connected and interactive supply chain interactions, I think is probably the way to talk about it. All of that now being challenged in some significant ways by COVID. And so we'll talk about how we can remain agile and in light of the pandemic, and probably an endemic as we move on, something that we're going to have to deal with each and every year. So keys to success, I post that the information. If we have discussions, in some weeks we'll have discussions, and some weeks we'll have live, and some weeks we'll have Zoom sessions. As I mentioned in the announcements earlier this week, the month of January seems to be completely remote as we handle the Omicron variant. I think the one takeaway that will be beneficial from this pandemic is all of my friends will now be familiar with the Greek alphabet as we go from Delta to, all these other Greek letters, and so we'll take away at least a respect for an ancient language that doesn't get used all that much. So in the discussions, just be respectful, and online protocols, etc. Keep up. As Ferris Bueller in that a very long ago movie said, life comes at you fast. If you blink, you might miss something. And I would just modify that to say, these 10-week classes move by pretty quickly. So just keep up. Don't get behind. If work or family has a way of challenging your schedule, try to let me know and see how we can adjust things. I'm not good at bad news at the last minute, but if you have a situation that is coming up and you might need a little bit of slack in terms of requirements, let me know. If you let me know ahead of time, I'm pretty flexible. I got an online, or I got a degree in management and computer science from the Wharton School of Business from the University and the University of Pennsylvania's Computer Science Department. And that was in the context of working as a CIO in the Philadelphia area. So with two boys in high school, it was a challenge, but was able to do it. And I found out that if something happened and I went to my professor and talked to he or she about it, it seemed to be a lot better than sort of ducking an assignment and then, you know, trying to work really hard to catch up and not contact the professor at the same time. It's now that I'm on the other side of the equation as an instructor, I find that the folks who let me know what's going on, at least I can try to be helpful and arrange some ways to catch up. So keep up, and remember, I think we're always trying to focus on how relevant this is going to be in my career, and you cannot escape the purchasing, contracting, and negotiating process. And hopefully this will help you. And the global supply chain, our manufacturing basis, are going to be talked about, and it will be interesting. From time to time, as I did this week, I'll bring an article or two that will illustrate some of the challenges that COVID has made into these equations. So do the work and you'll get a good grade. There's nothing really complicated about this. And I hope that we can really work together and learn a lot. It's an online course, completely asynchronous, except for the fact that we'll have a weekly meeting. So there is more freedom to the structure, and just keep that in mind. Here's my contact info. I try to get back to you in less than 24 hours. I'm pretty much an email person, so I don't go to the campus at DU all that often. I'm about an hour away, but when we have the live face-to-face sessions, should that happen, we'll just try to put a little bit of ambiguity in there. Who knows what's going to happen there, but I look forward to that as well. All right. For the assignment for week 1, keep in mind that you're going to do, you know, we've had this discussion, and some of you have already started talking about your organization that you're assessing in this, make or buy, build or buy, or partner assignment. What should the role of procurement in my organization be? I don't want you confessing proprietary weaknesses or whatever, but if you want to be a little bit ambiguous, I understand that. How do we procure things right now, and what's the gap between where we are now and where we want to be? I would imagine that just like work from home and all the other things that the pandemic has brought us to, a lot of this stuff is changing. What technologies are we investing in? If we're deploying our workforce more remotely, how do we have secure interactions? What kind of private interconnects do we have network-wise that keep proprietary information from running on the common internet? But I do want you to know that please don't tell me any insider information. I don't want to know about it. The minute you tell me something, in about 10 minutes, a white van is going to roll up in my driveway and 2 guys are going to come out. You'll never see me again. So I've done a lot of work, and I still have some of my security tickets, but I really don't I really don't want to know anything that is not in the public domain. And please be careful about sharing in that sense. I think most of you have that assignment. The article that I shared was about the supply chain and how it is affecting the, the pandemic is affecting the role of a global connected economy. I think I've kind of walked through offshoring and outsourcing and just-in-time inventory and all the buzzwords of procurement for the last few decades, only to see COVID really upset those equations. Did anyone read the article? Any comments that you had about it?
I was able to read through it really quick right before class. I didn't realize you sent it out until like 15 minutes ahead of time. But one thing that stood out to me was how bringing back this type of operation, maybe to CONUS instead of outsourcing in the future, they mentioned that it's going to be most likely heavily reliant on automated processing and less on like laborious types of activities that they can get cheaper overseas, right? So the more mechanical type of stuff is most likely what will come back to the United States before the stuff that really takes, lots of people in the factory to actually accomplish.
Yeah, it's not replicating the Ford Motor Company assembly line model. Subsystems, chassis, components will come together and be assembled perhaps in, and the new NAFTA agreements with Canada and Mexico have recognized that component assemblies are important to be assembled in places where labor may be cheaper. But you're right, AI, robotics will certainly be a part of this. One of the pain points was PPE in personal protective equipment in terms of our access to it. And I remember when COVID first, I had friends working in Wuhan and in other places who kind of warned me about this in December of 2019, that something was going to happen here. And my daughter-in-law works for Kimberly-Clark in Philadelphia, a big manufacturer of PPE, but in many cases, their factories and manufacturing were overseas, were Singapore and China, and getting materials became more and more difficult. And so I think that was one of the pain points, but certainly we're now feeling this. And to what extent is this a temporary issue that may have contributed to some inflationary spirals in terms of pricing, or is this going to take years to reach a new state of normal? Anyone else read the article and have some takeaways or thoughts about it?
I haven't read the completion of the article yet, but going off of what David said, I mean, if we start looking at supply chain bullwhip effect and the lean manufacturing ideology that happened before COVID, yeah, we're going to have to really reconsider what we keep on the shelf and what we just have available. So,
yeah, that's an important insight. What is that? Just in time, manufacturing. Where I remember visiting Dell's plant in Round Rock and watching, the semis roll up in the back with, hard drives from Seagate and Maxtor and some of the other sub-assemblies and motherboards and whatever. And just as soon as they got in, the next day, they were rolling out and completed computer systems. And I don't think anyone is going to try to go back to that in the near future. but just in time, we didn't realize how much that's predicated on a frictionless set of transport variables that in time of a pandemic, also in time of political political tensions between national economies is going to be more and more of a difficulty. So yeah, I told you guys I just bought a computer workstation from a company called Origins, and one of its, I mean, they make a fantastic computer, and it's a 5-year no questions asked repair policy to it. It comes as a premium, but they had access to the fastest cores and the fastest graphic processor units and other silicon that I wanted. I wanted 20 terabyte drives on this workstation because I do a lot of video editing and e-learning design for a couple of DoD customers who I work for, and they were able to get their hands on all these things. And I ordered this, I think it was the 23rd of December, and I got it by the 29th in a world where those kind of systems are harder to find. So I think this is going to be a competitive advantage of companies who can bring all these things together. I was down getting my, I have a little Land Rover Discovery Sport. It's just a little SUV, nice little car. And I was getting it worked on and waiting to pick it up. I went over and saw the new 2021 at that time Land Rover Defender, which is, if I started knocking off liquor stores for a few years, I could afford it. But it was beautiful. And I even called my wife. I said, honey, if we trade this car and the other car in, could we get a Defender? And we talked about it. She said, yeah. So I go to the salesperson and said, well, I'm sorry, you can't buy this. And there was no sticker on the car. He said, yeah, we're taking orders. And I said, so how long? He said, well, probably 6 to 8 months before you can get one of these. It turns out if we go to the UK, we can buy one there and get it back to our home in 3 months. There's import duties and a few other things, but it's actually easier. And the profit that the U.S. dealer makes is something that went from all tricked out. It's about 120 grand. It lists for probably 80, 85, but they're selling them now for 150. It's just kind of the way it's working. So anyway, I thought that there were some good reasons for the crisis, the cascading actions, and this is from the article, that the pandemic started the problem and revealed how interconnected and intricate the global supply chain is, and how, remember when people said you don't really need masks? I think that was more of a supply problem than really driven by health concerns. I know living and doing business in Japan and China, half the population wore masks as a part of just daily commuting and things like that. It just, sometimes the air was a challenge. I know in Mumbai it was that way. And so, but when the medical people said, you don't really need a mask, I just said, no, I don't believe that. But, it was a reduction in shipping, fewer goods being made because people were not working in factories. But we thought that demand would also go down. But as companies like Amazon and others found out, people living at home decided to start doing home improvement projects or other activities, or needed to buy technology, certainly needed to buy webcams and things like that. And so demand for some items would surge. And I think PPE was probably the easiest barometer of this problem. Most of that was being made in China, and it took a while for factories to ramp up production and for PPE to be delivered around the globe. And then we had a shipping container shortage because some of the countries where the PPE was going were not taking the empty containers, filling them up with their raw materials or manufactured products or things going back to China. And so it began to be a container shortage, and it's going to take a while just to get to normalize that that container shortage issue. Demand for durable goods has increased. I mean, last year, I just from my own family perspective, we bought a couple of TVs. I bought a computer system. My wife went back to school remotely and got a laptop. We got we got a washer and dryer. We replaced a 20-year-old unit. So lots of durable goods, and the government stimulus program kept a lot of money coming in, even as people were not able to go to work. All that did was strain the supply chains. Orders stripped availability, especially in shipping containers from Shanghai to Los Angeles to the East Coast in Savannah. These were ports that had real problems. You had labor shortages, things from the truck drivers needing to haul cargo, and employers had to raise wages, and so labor shortages still persisted, and so goods were still scarce. And so I think one of the other areas we found out is shortage of computer chips. Really, I think all of us knew that most of our cars were we were no longer able to repair them because they were all chipsets that chip boards that needed to be replaced by technicians, and those circuit boards were at a premium. And so things like medical devices as well. And then as a result, you had problems getting these components all together at the same time for more complex machine manufacture. So the last thing the article talks about is how this is not going to be fixed by February. This is a lasting problem. And so companies are not only saying, okay, what can we do to fix our immediate pain, but do we start bringing some of this component assembly activity to the continental U.S., to our hemisphere, and do we pull our partners closer in to the supply chain? So I think these are the kinds of things that we're going to have to deal with. I'll close this part of our discussion with a few sayings that you will hear me say many times, and that if you want to do business with Professor Bauer, you should keep in mind, okay? And these are not warnings, but these are just things that if I ever write a book, these will be some of the chapter headings. I got this from my dad. Bad news does not improve with age. I mean, it's true for supply issues. If you have a factory that goes down in Beijing or in Shanghai or Chengdu, whatever, or Amsterdam or wherever it's being manufactured, keeping that information from your partners is not a good strategy. I use this to say, if you have a problem, with work or something comes up or family matter, please don't wait till the 10th week of the class when the final paper is due to tell me that you've been working on a project at work, you know, and working double time for the last 3 weeks or last 4 weeks, and these things happen. I had a student who was managing a project in Antarctica doing networking for a bunch of scientific work that's going on down there. And they had a windstorm that ripped up a couple of his radar arrays. And, you know, it's not something you just call, you know, you call the geek squad to go fix. And it was putting some stress on it. But we talked about it and we're able to walk through things. And so have a problem, the sooner you let me know about it, the more flexibility, especially with grades. There comes a point in time in the semester where I have to turn something in, and my ability to be flexible is gone, and my managers need me to supply something, and I can't. You know, the decisions get taken out of my hands. Let's just put it that way. So that's one that I like, to make sure that we all understand at the beginning of the term. Here's another one, and this is the English teacher and corporate communicator in me speaking here. Writing is well-structured words assembled with intentionality, in other words, structure, with both content and its format being vital to the endeavor. Okay, two things, content and format. Which is more important, content or format? That's like asking an airplane passenger to say, which wing do you want to lose on your airplane? Really good thinking expressed in a sloppy or incoherent way will not be respected in your organization. On the other hand, perfectly formatted gibberish that is not intellectually, you know, structured or well thought out is no guarantee that it's going to be received either. So it's not either or, it's both and my grading is assiduously this way. I want you to write well and in good ideas and in good format. And the UCall program, one of the reasons I like working here is that we have that stress. Format is not the overriding concern, but it is a major concern. It's a grade point difference between an A and a B, between a B and a C, in that respect. And I think it carries with it the kind of weight that it should carry. Next, people say it's not the money, it's the principle of the thing. They lie. Have you ever had somebody say that? You're in an argument and they say, well, you know, it's not the money, you know, it's the principle of the thing. They are lying. It's always about the money. So, you know, people get all righteous, and I'm not accusing anyone of this. It's just something I learned from my grandmother a long time ago, that she used to say that. And then another grandmother on my mother's side said this: when people say, they start out the conversation by saying, I hate to tell you so, again, they're lying. People say, I hate to tell you so, and then what do? They tell you so in great detail. They love to remind you how you failed, or how what you said was correct or incorrect, or, you know, and if they didn't, if they really hated to tell you so, they would not have told you. So anyway, free information from Professor Bauer, and I think you will find that I'm a keen observer of life in its humor and its ironies. So anyway, all right. So questions on the course. We'll take a little bit of a break and get right into procurement in a minute. Any questions in on the course, I'm a big believer. You get out of life what you put into it, and the same is true with a course. You can kind of skim through things and throw it together, 2 minutes before the Zoom session. But sooner or later, there'll be an assignment that will ask you to aggregate weeks of study and reading into solving a question, and that's where your preparation will be challenged. So I really want you to get value from the ICT program at DU, that you can look at this time as formative in your career. I was a mid-level early CIO when I went to Wharton, and I was able to take that experience and move it to greater positions of technology and corporate responsibility as a result of it. It was a leverage and a stepping stone for my career, and I want that to be your experience as well. So any questions, anything that's not clear as far as the course?
I just have a quick question on the schedule going forward.
Sure.
Do you know, are there any plans to make up any of the in-person, or is it just gonna, as if, let's say after January, they're like, okay, we'll go back to doing the half and half, we're just gonna carry on like as already scheduled?
That's a great question. I don't know what the facilities issues will be if everyone came back at the same time. I've taught the hybrid model and pre-pandemic. I really don't know the answer, and so I don't want to speculate. I think the university administration made the right call in being prudent right now. I'm 156 years old. I want you guys to know that. So I don't really want to die during this pandemic. So the fact that this thing seems to hurt older people as a personal concern for me. On the other hand, I'm tired of Zoom, and I think all of us are. I'll try to make things engaging and try not to be boring, but boy, it's hard. I look forward to having a bit more interactions and being able to look people in the eye face to face. But I really don't know if it will just factor back to, okay, starting February, we're going to adopt a week on, week off schedule, or we're going to make up and do all the Thursdays in February or in early March to make up for that. I just really don't know, but it's a good question. If I hear anything from the powers that be, from Kathy, I'll certainly pass that along. Other questions?
I have another one if no one else does.
Go right ahead.
All right. This is my first course that didn't have like a dedicated text. Not that I have concern, just a curiosity more of how it's gonna look. And I haven't looked at every single module, right? Like obviously I should have at this point, but I've read through the syllabus and I have an understanding of what's coming week to week. But do you find that it's still with the materials that we do use puts together a really clear picture on what we're trying to establish?
I think so. When I've taught this course with books that were massive. Before we start sharing screens, after the break, I'll show you the book that I think is a really comprehensive book. It's like $200, and I think the one thing that the DU program wants to make sure is that we're not being beholden to a text in a way that, okay, you're going to get this perspective. I'm kind of, I think it's actually a good question. And what I try to do as someone who loves to read and stays, I read a couple of books a week and stays on top of things, I will share with you, if this is a particular concern of yours, I'll share with you what I think the best books in the field are in terms of procurement and supply chain management. We're going to talk about strategic advantage in the procurement area. And so I actually have a couple of books that I'll pass your way. If you've read them before, great. If you haven't read them, get them on Amazon and spend the time to read them, because there'll be one book that I'll talk about in the second presentation. I use it several times a year, and in terms of strategic planning or something about a consultation on something. So on the other hand, the enterprise architect course that I taught had books that were from 2003. No cloud. No, I mean, it was enterprise mobility, enterprise cloud, global cloud, private, hybrid, public, etc. Never figured into the discussion. And now it's everything cloud, and anyone who has their own data center is not as innovative as they should be, unless it's a security issue. So these are, it is always an issue. I like the material that I've looked at, and like you guys, I'm coming to some of this for the first time. I think they've improved this. Some of the stuff in the past was very dated, but I'll mention some things that I think are still. The book on negotiations that we used is about 25 years old, but it's still a good book, and I would recommend it. When we get to that part, I'll talk to you that. I've written some material on RFXs, and I have what I call a guide for the perplexed. It's, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages on the subject, and I'll pass that along. I've written 4 or 5 books. I just completed a major book on management of critical infrastructure for the Department of Homeland Security. All the electric power plants and nuclear power plants, coal, natural gas, and water systems, and big, stadiums and transportation systems. How do you manage that kind of critical infrastructure? So I just finished a book on that, and I'm working on creating an e-learning course. So doing some work there. So I value writing, I value reading, and if there is a shortage of information anywhere in the course, I will definitely try to give you some guidance there, as someone who sometimes I just find that's a better way than just downloading an article. The New York Times article was great, but understanding supply chain economics takes a little bit more digging. And so that's you want to be current, but you also want to be substantive. And so that's the kind of balance that we have to maintain. If you ever feel like I want to learn more here, let me know, because I can probably bring some experience to this. You never know when that kind of depth you can't fake. You can always read the Wall Street Journal that day, but having or knowing where to go when you have a project that needs that kind of thought, what's on your bookshelf, what's available, is really important. That's good question. Anything else? I probably put you all to sleep by now. Anything else? All right, I've got 7:02. Why don't we come back in 10 minutes, and we'll drive on into the second module on introducing procurement and the main assignment for this week. Okay. All right, I will stop sharing and we'll go get a drink, bio breaks, whatever, and we'll see you in 10. Okay, thanks. just want to check to see if you guys can see the screen that I'm sharing, Introduction to Procurement.
Sure can.
Okay, welcome back. Hope your break was helpful. I know the Zoom class is scheduled for 2 hours, and I prefer to look at it as how much work do we need to do, and I'm not going to take more than that time. And if it's something that we kind of understand everything, we got the lesson down, and there are no questions, we move efficiently, knowing that some of you probably need time to complete the assignment more than listening to your ancient professor droning on. So just keep that in mind, and we'll move from there. Going to summarize some of the things that are in the module, if you haven't looked at them, but also introduce a few things that I think are important in this idea of how we manage our procurement and how we manage our supply chain, even if it's just some of the support functions that our organization needs to work with, partners and those who prepare materials or information or data that we eventually will crunch, however it's constructed. Can we make the relationships with those in our value chain a part of the competitive advantage that our company has? So these are the learning objectives, again, right from the module. How procurement leadership can create a competitive advantage, and you're going to implement this by doing the build, buy, partner exercise, which is actually a pretty good exercise. I found that the more you're able to look at your organization, step apart, step away from it, and say, okay, this is a strength, this is a weakness, this is the way we've always done it, this is something that we may benefit by moving it, as long as it's not something that I don't publish or share anything on social media. I work with, I have a patent on ethical algorithms in job search technology. Companies like Indeed and Amazon and others use algorithms as they select candidates to interview based on their algorithmic processing of resumes and applications and things like that. Those documents and that information should be processed with algorithms that are ethical and meet the standards in the United States and the EU and other national governments of fairness, equality, inclusion, etc. And unfortunately, in some organizations, they don't. So I've patented a process whereby algorithms can be certified by a third-party service as being ethical. Sort of in the United States, they call it a good housekeeping seal of approval. But this third-party certification service is something that I'm working with a number of large tech companies to implement. Oracle, for example, is for one example, is really keen to do this. They want to make sure that the way they select people doesn't reveal a hidden bias or even an intentional one. So if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll probably see some information about that, but I would never share anything that a student shared with me. I value security, integrity, and whatever, but please don't reveal anything that you wouldn't want your professor or anyone else to see. Okay, so you're going to communicate with your leadership about a supply recommendation based on your calculations. And we'll take a look at that as we go in. So these were the takeaways, sort of the main titles. Modern procurement leaders really need to make procurement a creative and competitive advantage. In the world pre-pandemic, procurement could be a real competitive advantage. I think of Dell, for example. I think of in that space, what Amazon has done in terms of being able to move product quickly. The profits that they have reaped during the pandemic are indicative of some leadership in that area. We may argue about whether that's ethical or not, and that's a good discussion to have. But if you're squeezing your suppliers and in ways that inhibit their making a fair profit, then that's the kind of thing that is not sustainable. But what is a business strategy that can affect procurement? And a phrase that I'm tired of hearing because it's seldom, it's kind of like the word agile. Well, we're an agile company. Really? Does that mean you iterate, like software that's agilely developed where you compile every day, that you have sprints and you have, no, it's an adjective that, like a lot of marketing buzzwords, we're fast, we're nimble, we're quick, we're, and like other companies aren't. And it's almost lost its definitional value. And digital transformation is another one of those terms. Does that mean we get upgraded PCs or the latest version of Microsoft Office 365? That's not a digital transformation. It's a regular upgrade. But are there ways that we can interconnect with our supply chain to really wring out some of the friction and administrative overhead that gets in the way of moving things? And that's the kind of transformation that we need to see in here. So how we get the suppliers in our value chain responding to change. What are the ways that we need to incentivize their adoption of these kinds of things? So firms who are successful transform procurement. Look at Walmart, look at Amazon, look at some of these other companies who have looked at their systems and have pulled their suppliers in ways that, and they were able to secure product when there were shortages. And this company, Horizon, that I talked about, computer supplier, I was very impressed how they were able to get and actually talk to them about how that was working. So anyway, buy partner, buy build partner, important that way. So this is from the Canvas PowerPoint. Build is using your internal resources. Buy is to buy an established business or capability. Partner is more than buy. It's an agreement that they are going to deliver a series or multiple products or services. And sometimes that's with someone in the ecosystem. Sometimes it's with a competitor. There are always antitrust issues, and when two big partners agree to merge certain functions, whether it's competitive or anti-competitive, is always something that the lawyers will take a look at. But these are just restatements from the Canvas PowerPoint. The rule of thumb: build is best in the early stages of a product's life cycle, especially when there is not a settled sense or the technology has not been commoditized. The book that I would recommend And you know what? I'm going to recommend a few books toward the end of the class, but the book that I'll recommend in that area is called Crossing the Chasm. It's by Jeffrey Moore. It's a book that is about marketing and selling technologies to mainstream customers and adoption cycles and things like that. I'll mention that. So if you're early in that cycle, early adoption, you want to build it your own. If you have a unique set of skills, to quote Liam Neeson, if you have a unique competency that you don't want to give away, you don't want it to be replicated and commoditized, then building that, holding that intellectual property closely is valuable. If, on the other hand, mature products where growth rate has leveled off, things eventually get virtualized. For example, in IT, we virtualize servers, then we move to virtualized storage, and then we're now moving to virtualized networks and virtualized firewalls and all these other areas. And as things become less innovative and more commoditized, you just buy market share. When an industry standard has not been established, partnering with a leader in that area may be the right way to do it. So there's different reasons to build, buy, or partner, and you're going to have to calculate and express your recommendations in a pithy, and this is not 10 pages, this is a very short article that you're going to write for the assignment this week. There's a SWOT analysis that's part of the assignment, build, buy, partner, and the SWOT is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the threats of partnering are some things that I've had I've had happen to me. I had a partner that I thought I could trust, and we went after a government contract, and they knew how much we were going to bid, and so they came in 30 grand under our bid and took the whole job. And I tell you what, you learn, you got to trust a partner. And so, or you create enough consequences if they are distrustful or deceitful. And so this is where human nature always has to be taken into account in the equation. The assignment has a scoring system, and this is all straight from the website, so I'm not going to read it for you. I don't like people who read PowerPoint, but I did structure this so that you can look this over and you'll get the slides later tonight. As soon as the video recording is all downloaded, I usually send that out. Now, I post it so you can link to it. I won't send you a big file. But this is the spreadsheet that you're going to use. So, and you look at the various factors. How attractive is this in terms of the industry, barriers to entry, market growth? How will this help us get, more customers? What are our competitors doing? And there's subtotals at that point. Is this a product or service offering, and how we rate those? What our capabilities are. Is this a fit for our culture? For a services company, maybe manufacturing is not what we do. If we manufacture, maybe XaaS and cloud-based services are something that we're going to buy and not try to build ourselves. As somebody said, maybe we'll do that ourselves. And then a friend said, well, you can make your own rubber bands and your own legal pads too. And you'll be making so many other things that you'll forget about what your core stuff is. And so it was a kind of a sarcastic comment, but when you say it with a smile, you can help people to understand that you can't do everything. What is it that sets your company apart in terms of competitive advantage. And try not to be too clever. You want to, you don't want to put the same grade, you know, build, buy, partner. I'm going to give all of those a 2 because I can't make my mind up. Try to split the difference and, you know, give a higher weight to one that, even if it's marginally better, you know, give one a lower number like a 1 and the other a 2, just so that you can end up with something that isn't a tie at the very end, which doesn't help you make a decision. So this is a spreadsheet, and you can download this right off the website. We'll talk a little bit off the subject, but importantly about value creation and value chain. And, you know, I'm going to state some things that are probably blinding, a blinding grasp of the obvious, but I'll speak about some economic issues. To be competitively advantaged, your product or service has to create more value than its competitors. And as goods, if you're manufacturing, move down a vertical chain, procurement and supply chain, you've got to figure out how you can squeeze value from that process, either by being faster, by being different, by differentiating, by quality, by low cost. You know, there's a variety of ways to do that. This is called the value chain. And so when people talk about value chain economics or value creation, that's what they're talking about. The best work on this subject was written in 1985. He's gone on to write other things. A professor in business at Harvard Business School by the name of Michael Porter. His book called Competitive Advantage. If I had to recommend a book for this class or any course that was doing how to develop competitive advantage for my organization, Michael Porter's book, Competitive Advantage. I'll hold it up when we stop screen sharing. I think it's the best book. I recommend it to all my students. I think it is a wonderful resource for, you could take any industry. I've done it with manufacturing. I've done it with education. I've done it with security services, with cloud, with a variety of different verticals. And it is a very powerful framework. And Porter's, you know, you'll hear somebody say, yeah, let's do the Porter 5-force analysis on this. And so I have a couple of slides at the end that I'm not going to show tonight, but I'll include them in the deck just so you can see some other ways in which this is illustrated. But his generic competitive strategies are, you know, what makes the company strong, and cost leadership. How is it we control our costs? We're the least, we wring costs out. We're the low cost leader. Or is it quality differentiation? You know, there's a difference between a Range Rover, a Mercedes, and a Fiat. And one will be a cost leader, and others will be differentiated as as quality. And the questions that we ask in each of these contexts are, can procurement give us a cost advantage? Dell is a good example there. Amazon is another one. This differentiation, I bought a water-cooled workstation with 2 20+ terabyte drives and graphical processing unit. I paid more, but they were able to, this company Origin, they were able to have all those parts there when I needed it. And so procurement, definitely, if you look at how they differentiated themselves, you know, so, you know, in other segments, cost can give an advantage. I think about Walmart. They have the supply chain economics, the transport to be able to move a lot of things, and they're nipping at the heels of companies like Amazon and UPS and other shippers and FedEx. So Porter's competitive strategies, you may want to use this to say, okay, what is the competitive advantage my company has? All right, and why? Are we the cheapest in town? Are we the best in town? People pay a premium for the services that we deliver because we are the best at what we do. And some of you work for companies that work that way. Some of you work for companies that have to compete by competitive bidding with the federal government. And some of those bids are weighted qualitatively. Some of them are the lowest cost. And so how do you approach a particular project or particular bid? Those are things that come into play there. Michael Porter has this 5-force model. You know, what are the barriers to entry for a particular business? What is the competition? How much power do the buyers have? We're finding that buyers are used to, you know, cheap costs in groceries, and those prices are pretty elastic. As supply chains and manufacturing get taxed, those costs are being, you know, employment or labor costs are increasing. They're being passed on to customers. And so to what extent are my suppliers able to, you know, think about chipsets for a car manufacturer? How are they going to affect the cost of a car and the ability to build it and manufacture it and get it to a car lot around the country or the world? Are there substitutes? And these are, you know, what are the substitutes that can be used? So I'm going to use, I need to use an organic. Well, can I find farms that grow something that is not certified organic, but is not made with pesticides? Sometimes getting a product certified as organic takes years, and you could just put a logo saying, you know, certification in process or something like that. Are there substitutes? But this is what in this book that I talked about, the 5-force model. And so supplier power and substitutes are keys in procurement. So when you think about that, keep that in mind. Here's a strategy canvas just to, you know, you're looking at a product, what its attributes are and what its weight scores are. This is these are one of the things that helps you to create a strategy in the build, buy, partner model before you get to the final scores. And so this is a map for competitive analysis. You know, you have low quality, low cost in the bottom left-hand corner. Then you know, and those are your, you know, your fiats. And then up in the top right is if you're looking at cloud, you're looking at Google and Amazon. And if you're looking in the bottom left, you're looking at Tencent and Alibaba, although those are moving from bottom left to top right as we speak. And so the question that I've added to Porter is, how does a competitive advantage in procurement affect your position? Amazon really helps people to get their clouds deployed quickly. And that way they can start billing their customers quickly, and people can get their clouds deployed quickly. And we did some work using the Elastic Cloud services that that Amazon has in the previous enterprise architecture class, and we deployed some clouds just to show how quickly you can create a cloud, you can replicate that over time zones and global locations. You can add compute and storage and high performance activities and web and all these other sorts of things pretty quickly. And because Amazon can deploy those quickly, I would take them as an advantage over Oracle and over Google. Maybe not Microsoft, because Azure is catching up in that respect. So all those companies are up in that top right quadrant there in terms of quality and higher cost. So anyway, so those are some of the things. So in looking at competitive advantage, the ability of the firm's workforce to exploit IT to create new products and services that sell well. It's not just having the technology, it's doing something with it. Sorry for the bills on this. This was from a presentation I made. Do we have innovations in our own firm's ability? I work with a company that does e-learning and does certification training. But where we have made a unique competitive advantage, there are hundreds of companies that do this, is we want to become the partner for the learning and development activities. This is part HR, part learning and development in larger companies. We want to be able to do the data crunching and the data analysis so that their HR people, management level people in the stack can look at any employee and say, okay, this is where this particular employee is in terms of skills. These are the needs that we have for particular jobs. We need this many systems architects. We need this many, Salesforce experts, whatever it is, but to give them the ability to understand the talent they have and the talent in a developing workforce, where the talent track is for those particular people. That's not native to a lot of companies. And so that's where I want my company to have strategic advantage. And we use technology. We use learning management systems. We use data analysis. We use AI. We use a bunch of other technologies that I can't tell you about, but it helps my clients be able to manage their employees faster. Could they do it themselves? Yeah, but they don't have the PhDs in learning science. They don't have the programmers in learning management systems and in instructional technology and e-learning and ISO certifications 17024. I'm just rattling off a bunch of numbers here, but those things can make the difference in a certification that's legally defensible. In other words, nuclear power reactor overheats. People tend to pay attention to something like that. Were those people properly trained? Were they certified? You get triple damages if there is negligence proven by the critical infrastructure personnel. They were not trained, they were not managed, they were not certified. Okay, you can get sued for far more money than just the actual damages. So those are the kind of things that you want to keep in mind. So this is competitive advantage, and this is what you're going to work on. How will my procurement and supplier management be an asset or a liability to the organization? So that's the question. So this week, you're going to look at this, you analyze, you download this assignment, the Excel build by partner template, and you score the project based on the criteria. You can make up a project, or you can use one that interests you in another organization, or something that's a part of your organization that you'd like to present to your manager. We did some in the previous courses that I've done that were directly contributing to the organizational activities, others that were more, concept based. So you're doing two things in this assignment. You complete the Excel template, and it's right on the Canvas page. You have an executive summary, 1-page Word document, as if you're writing the document to your CEO. So you're not going through every cell in the calculus of why you're recommending to buy or partner, but you're saying in summative form, for this project that we're working on, I don't think, based on my own calculus and analysis, that we have the internal competencies to deliver this project on time and on budget. And I recommend that we partner with, you make up whatever company it is, the XYZ Corporation, because they have, so you can fudge if you're creating a mystery company. Just don't make them intergalactically competent or anything like that. If you don't want to reveal partners, I respect that as well. But that's the assignment this week. It's 1 page. The hardest thing to do is write a succinct 1-page executive summary. I'll send out a document later, probably tomorrow, on how to write an executive summary for those of you who are new in this area, just to help you pull the lens up on what you're doing so that a C-level person can look at this and walk away saying, okay, I can operationalize this. I can give this to my VPs and directors to make sure this gets done, or the IT teams or the process teams or the manufacturing teams. But I've got a good picture of what's going to be going on here. So I'll give you some of that if you need it. Maybe some of you are okay in that area. I'm trying not to patronize you or your skill sets, but if you don't know it, I certainly, as an instructor, I want to make sure that you get as much information as you need to thrive, not only on the assignment, but in your career. All right. Like every assignment we have at DU's ICT program, the rubric is your friend. You're going to get tired of Professor Bauer saying that, but content, clarity, grammar, style. Remember I said how grammar, style, format is important. Content and clarity is important as well. A little bit more weight given to the content here. I'm not going to be grading your Excel documents. I want to see what you did to calculate them. We'll talk a little bit about the assignment. We'll do a little debrief in next week's class, how we went about it. If you would like to take the lead on your project and share that with the group, I give bonus points for giving me a couple slides and walking through how you did your calculation. If you think it's exceptionally well done, share it with us. But as I said before, grammar, style, etc. is important. And so keep that in mind. And I never require anything without helping you get there. And so in tomorrow's email, you will find the following Word document. Professor Bauer is your friend. It's a 3-page template. I worked with some students to produce this, and it's a cover page example where you can just open it up, save it as something else, keep the template, put it in there, and it's a perfectly formatted cover page. And then a content page, something that's in your report, is the second one. And then your reference page example is there as well. You can see the headers and the page and your name and all that stuff. You just plug and chug. All right. So it's a in the Turabian UCall style guide. Maybe you already have this and you're insulted that I'm being so low grade in how I'm recommending this, but
So the
I
standard
found,
APA format.
excuse me?
I said, so basically the standard APA format.
Yes, sir. This is the Turabian UCall style guide that we all have come to know and love. I think you'll find that you're not going to get in any problems with your professors using it. And so that's the thing that I found. Now, you can get the handbook and memorize it, and maybe you have lots of time in your life to do that. On the other hand, if you just want to get done, this may help you. Okay, use at your own guidance. I'm not trying to tell you how to do the work, but I'm saying if formatting things is a problem for you, this may help you. Okay, questions on the assignment as we wrap up.
Yeah. Just on the file type, you said a Word document, or can you submit a PDF file? So
You can
does that
save
really
it as a
matter?
PDF.
PDF.
Sometimes, especially with references, Word is bloated code. Let me just be really clear on that. And you think everything is perfect, and you end up with these phantom line breaks or section breaks or page breaks, and you have like half a page that's blank, and the next page starts halfway down the line. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't, So if that happens, just save it as PDF, and that's fine. I can, I've got all the PDF tools that will work there as well. No problem. Good question, Abraham. Other questions? All right, let me share now that I've got a camera. Let me see if I can get this where you can see it. Here it is. This is Crossing the Chasm. My company, Open Networking Foundation, had a seminar in Silicon Valley in San Jose about this book. And you can find Jeffrey Moore's stuff on YouTube. This is like, I don't know, 200 pages. And it's his diagram on acquisition. It's an S curve, and it starts with early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then laggards. And you could use this to, sorry about the focus here. This is terrible. Anyway, and then the Porter book, Competitive Advantage. Yeah, it's right here. All right, here it is. It's a great book. It's a little thicker, and he's got some great charts, and you can find a lot of these charts. Sometimes the PowerPoints are for sale, but sometimes they're not. And find some college professor who's talking about it, and you can borrow their slide decks and things like that. So anyway, I think you'll find those are the two books that I would recommend. Both of these books, Crossing the Chasm and Competitive Advantage, I would recommend as a part of your long-term library, especially as you get into the management of technology. You have to understand why people adopt change and buy new things or adopt new ways of doing old things. And then how can my company be competitive? And what strategic advantage I can bring to help my company be that way. And everyone can be, if you're the low cost leader, if you're the high quality leader. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can distinguish and differentiate your company in that respect. Other questions?
Yeah, Professor, you mentioned a book that I'm not sure if you said $200 or I think it was $200.
Oh yeah. Let me let me find that. That is the supply management book. Hang on. Yes, here it is. It was hiding on me. It is a lethal weapon in some countries. I think that the high cost had caused some people. I think if you're going to recommend a book and then not read it in the class, I think it's a waste of time. But this is Purchasing and Supply Chain Management. It's published by Cengage. There are four editors. I mean, it goes through Six Sigma. It goes through management of categories. It goes through strategy development. I taught this book almost cover to cover in one of the earlier versions of the class, and I thought it was really valuable. Like I said, I wish I could give it away, but I don't work for Cengage. I know some people who do. The cost of if you could buy this used, the 5th edition is really not that much different than the 6th. This is probably dated, but you know, go to Amazon and look at the contents. But this was published in 2016. So there's probably the 7th edition, because the racket of academic publishing, which I know a little bit about, is that you publish a new version. You don't let students buy the old version, and the new version has 5% variability in terms of new content. May have some new pictures or whatever, but it's really not that different. And yet we could charge you $250 for this. College academic publishing is no better than the mafia. I mean, it borders on monopolistic. The authors who work for these companies are owned by them. They make big money comparatively speaking, for authors. So don't get me started on this. You already have. But purchasing operations, strategic sourcing process, critical supply chain elements, future directions are the major parts of this. But it's 848 pages. So I would say if this is something that you're really interested in, I would buy it. Like a lot of the books that you get in your DU career, you don't have time to read them all reflectively. You got to read them to get ready for the paper that's due this Friday or Sunday night. But having it on your desk, you may have more time after you graduate to reflect on these things, and you'll find this is not a bad book. I think it's a good book. It's expensive. I would certainly get the others before you invest in this one. But again, Amazon is a great place to buy a used book, and like I said, it's going to be, this book will be radically rewritten as we come out of COVID. I hope it's a 3 or 4 year process and not a 10-year process. But there's going to be, just like the New York Times article that I referenced, there's going to be a lot of things that, just in time and agile and all these sorts of things predicated on a global viscous supply chain that no longer exists. And so people are going to be hedging in terms of their strategies. So anyway, sorry, it's like one of you guys asked me the time of day and I gave you a a lecture on watchmaking. So sorry I went too long on that, Raleigh, but just wanted to give you some background there.
No, that's perfect. And I just looked it up on Amazon. The 7th edition right now is $88.
That's not bad. And I would imagine the 6th is a more rational, 40 or 50. Whatever you do from Amazon, never rent a textbook. As you talk about being gouged, they make the whole cost up in 2 months. And my wife rented a textbook last term, and I said, honey, you can buy this. And anyway, so all right. Other questions? I know we're coming up on the time
Right.
here. Abraham, did you
yeah.
have a question?
Yeah, just to wrap my head around the reading materials, I've seen it in the syllables that there is no specific book for this course, right? So does
No.
that mean,
Now on week 1, you'll see there are lots of reading assignments. There's a lecture presentation on procurement and why it's important. So good information there. Sometimes I will cherry pick information from the assignment, but you should read it all the way through. There are links to other articles that you should run down. If I feel like there's something that long-term would be helpful on the subject, I'll recommend them, like the books I recommend here, but none of these are required for the assignments for this week or for the course. Okay, just to make sure that you understand that. And I don't get any money selling these books. Okay, I wish I did, but I don't. If you want to manage critical infrastructure, I got a great book for you. So anyway, but that's I'm just kidding. So anyway, all right. Good question though, Abraham. Thanks for asking me, and we get that clarified. Anything else? All right, guys, have a great night. Work hard. If you have any questions, you're struggling with the one pager or whatever, ping me. I'm pretty responsive, and anything that you need, just stay in touch, and good luck this week. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll send the links and all the documents real soon. Okay. Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
and
Have a good night.
we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye now.